My name is Levi. I am the CEO and co-founder of Partly. The reason we're doing this longer video is to help give you a much deeper insight into how Partly works. Now, I think this is a little bit unusual, but anyone who wants to solve really hard problems, who really cares about their work they do, should want to know a bit more about the company. Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to cover what Partly do, why we exist, why now, what is the impact of us succeeding in the long run, a little bit about our strategy and how we think about things, and then some insights into our culture, our way of working. What is Partly? Partly's mission is to connect the world's parts. Now, what does that actually mean? Partly have to make it really easy for buyers to find the right parts. Today, most buyers are getting on the phone, they're calling all their suppliers to try and find the right parts. We have to build all of the tools needed to solve that problem. Why do Partly exist? Why now? This is a pretty traditional industry. Now, I spend a lot of time in the industry myself, reconditioning engines, and the problems the industry faced and still face today are remarkably difficult. It was incredibly hard to bridge the gap between what was there today from a technology perspective and what the industry really needs to continue moving forward. Partly have bridged that gap, or are at least starting to bridge that gap. We're in this really exciting time because technology has now reached the point where you can actually solve these really hard problems. Tens of millions of vehicles, hundreds of millions of parts, billions or trillions of relationships between them, extremely difficult to find exactly the right part, and an industry that is still struggling to catch up. With the use of AI, we use large language models now a lot. We actually had our own language model before OpenAI became popular, graph neural networks, and a whole suite of other cloud computing advances. We've been able to take the problem and at least make it tractable. It's solvable at some level. There's 1.9 trillion, or there's nearly 2 trillion USD spent on parts. If we really live up to our potential as a company, we could be one of the largest companies on the planet. That is not going to happen today. There's a huge amount of risk in getting there. There's a whole lot of things that could go wrong. But the important thing is it is at least possible purely based on the size of the market and the size of the problem we're solving, making it really easy for buyers to find the right parts. The other really interesting aspect of this is used parts or green parts. By connecting used parts with buyers like insurance all around the world, you can actually have a huge impact on the amount of parts that are recycled, that are reused, and this is reused in the most ideal way possible, right? They're just taken off one car and put on another. That prevents all of these parts, thousands or millions of parts in vehicles, from being burned, melted down, or going into landfill. And it's one of these really exciting benefits of a pure network where you're solving that problem by building this infrastructure just at a pure technology level. So really exciting. Going into a little bit of our strategy. Our focus is on the buyer. Now, sometimes we would say that's the fitter or the human being who fits the part on the vehicle. That's usually a mechanic, but we'd say the buyer of the parts. Now, the reason that's so core to our strategy is ultimately the buyers are making the decisions here. Buyers are the ones that are struggling right now. And so whenever we are thinking about the products we're building, the infrastructure we're providing to these other large companies, we're always thinking about what is best for the buyer, right? We're thinking about that one thing that we have to do really, really well. So from a strategic standpoint, it's building a common language that the whole industry can adopt, can agree on, taking that common language, taking the infrastructure, we would call it a PIM, Product Information Management tool, all of the machine learning AI tools we have for structuring and standardizing this, providing this as a service to really large businesses so that they can sell more parts and then ultimately solve the problem for the buyer by really focusing on their needs. Our team is really key to our success here. In order to build a really strong team, we have quite a strong culture. So we have clear cultural values. We have 10 core values. That might be a bias for action, be an owner, reason from first principles, and trust. These 10 core values really help us align the team and make it clear what Partly values. We also give everyone in the company equity. Anyone who works for Partly have skin in the game. They've got a stake in the company. Caring is absolutely critical. Coming in, caring about the problem, caring about the mission is fundamental, so everyone gets equity. We also have a handful of cultural pillars or things that really, they're behaviors that matter to us. So one of those would be we assume best intentions. No one's coming in and assuming that someone has poor intentions. We optimize for impact, right? In other words, we're not doing things for the sake of doing things. We're figuring out the most effective ways of jumping to the next step. We're being strategic, we're thinking ahead.